Oke, hari ini kita judulnya sih bagi saya agak pusing ya bacanya, resilience workshop apa sih itu, tapi kita mau bahas cukup detail hari ini. Gak apa-apa, nanti sesinya akan interaktif. Nanti ada Timothy Stowe, ada dari rekan-rekan Cisco juga di sini dan Mastersystem yang siap untuk membantu proses berjalannya workshop hari ini.
So, a couple of the challenges. The first one is the hybrid worker. If we can remember during the COVID time, what are some of the challenges we had at that time? Number one, how many of you struggled with VPN connectivity? Everyone is at home. What did we have to do? Well, it was good for Cisco at the time. Buy more firewalls, right? Hey, I need to add more metal boxes to handle the traffic. Increase my bandwidth, add more metal boxes, add more licenses. And then COVID done, and we're back to work, and now I have this stack of stuff, right? So it was a big shift. Now we're looking at things like SSE or SASE. So some of these trends, also on the IT side, think about the security challenges. How do I keep those laptops patched and up to date with security software if they're not connected to VPN? How did I do that? How did my SOC or my collection tools collect events from those systems when they're not connected? Many of my customers struggled with that. The number of events in the SOC went down, because they weren't collecting everything. They could not collect everything, okay? Also, the applications are changing, right? We have more and more collaboration tools, things like Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, whatever you're using, a lot more SaaS apps, right? So how does the firewall inspect some of that traffic? We have different encryption things, TLS 1.3 and certificate pinning and all that stuff. So many challenges to get this to work. But the business, again, is saying, we want workforce flexibility. I want my users to be able to work anywhere and everywhere. In the office, at home, coffee shop, wherever, okay? So big challenges, but we need to do this. I know I had an interview last week with a security engineer, and he's like, hey, how flexible is the timing? Do I need to go into the office? The traffic is, I don't want to go to the office every day. That was one of the top 3 questions. I was like, okay, you get to ask me some. What about this? What about that? Money was not the really important part, but that was one of the questions that came up. So that's one. Second one, continuation, is the security piece of that. If we don't have the proper security capabilities to protect the endpoint, maybe the VPN part, think about your applications in the cloud. Again, for most of the reports, I will try to cite the source, and I will give you guys a copy of the report if you want to take anything from this. All right, the infrastructure is also changing. Some of you might have started down this journey earlier, especially the banking sector. They started looking at, how do I move away from the data center or the center of my data, which was one place, to bring everything back in? Okay, now let's talk about the IT team's policy changes. How do I take all of that stuff and apply policy across the multi-cloud, across my LAN, across my WAN? What about my extranet or where my guests connect? How do I take all of this stuff and say, okay, here's my one security tool that pushes policy to everything? Doesn't exist. Any vendor, there's not one to do all of these things. In fact, many of these products or solutions have their own user interface. Some of them even have like their own language, right? We talked about VNets and VPCs. On the LAN side, you may know VLANs and ACLs, okay? We almost need like a translation guide to be able to translate these different services. Now, all of that also creates additional risk. When I have more connectivity, more devices on my infrastructure, more maybe third party on the inside, maybe more API gateways. Looking at this, what's the risk to my environment? Application performance, right? Some of you may be looking at APM or digital experience monitoring, DEM capabilities, right? All right, now cyber readiness or cyber resiliency. When we talk about cybersecurity resiliency, that means the ability to obviously protect. We have to do the baseline protection, right? After protection, we have detection. Okay? So you can't do everything. There's not one product from any vendor that will give you 100% protection. Doesn't exist. We have to do better at detection. So if something does, or when something does happen, the ability to detect it and, next step, respond. Some action, something. You detect it, now you take a response. The response may depend on the type of event you're seeing, okay? If it's a single laptop, maybe I do a quarantine with my EDR tool. If it's a wide spreading kind of worm, maybe I take an action with a firewall, or maybe I engage the network. So the response is dependent upon the type of event that I'm seeing. I don't shut down my whole internet connectivity and bring down my data center because of one PC, right? Probably not. So when we think about that, the resiliency part is to be able to shorten that time frame from detection to response and keep the business up, okay? When we talk about being resilient, again, we'll bring up the COVID thing. Our bodies are resilient too, right? If we get infected, we hopefully fight back, okay? Same thing with the network, same thing with the SOC.